Hello and welcome to Veterans of the Valley. I'm Tom Turbyville. Sometimes we forget exactly how young some of our World War II veterans were when they laid their short lives on the line for us. October 26, 1944, Jim Gordon of College Station flew his first B-24 mission over Austria. The next day, he celebrated his 19th birthday. He'd fly 34 more missions over Europe, most of them with a crew that he had been with since their training days back in Houston. One of those missions earned him a Purple Heart. It was all part of the life of a World War II tail gunner, and we're proud to have Jim Gordon, our guest on Veterans of the Valley. Jim, it's definitely proud to have you here. Let's talk about the early days. You grew up in Gilmer, Texas.
That's
and
right.
you wanted to come to Texas A&M. Sort of talk about how that all came about. Didn't really work out the way you wanted it to at A&M. Talk about the early days before you joined up.
Well, I wanted to come to A&M. My older brother was here.
Right.
And so they had all these different programs like V-12, V-6, Army, Navy program, Air Force program. And if you could get into college early enough and get into one of these programs, there was a chance you'd get to get a commission or get to be a flying officer. Mm-hmm. Well, of course, that was my desire and everybody's desire, I guess, about then. So my superintendent of schools, John Avery, he let Dick Barrett, another friend of mine, graduated us early in January, mm-hmm. 43,
right.
And we came on down here and enrolled, and Dick enrolled in the Navy program, and I enrolled in or tried to get in the Air Force program, but it was full up, so there wasn't any chance of me getting in until the next semester. So everybody thought, well, if you're going to get in the war, you better get in the war, because this thing's going to be over.
Right.
It wasn't.
Right, it was getting to the late part of the war. So instead, you went to Houston. You went to work for the shipyard. You joined up in 1944. Sort of take us after that. A lot of people, when they first join up, one of the first places
actually, I joined up in 43.
Right.
In May of 43.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Inducted in 44.
Right. And at Ellington Field, and they said, I said, when do I report? They said, we'll call you. And 8 months later, they did.
Right.
Like forever, you think, well, it's going to be over, you know. And they called us up on 8th of January, 1944.
Right.
And so there was a whole group of us that had volunteered, and the 50 of us, and they shipped us out to San Antonio for indoctrination and uniforms and shots and things like that. And then they immediately shipped us to Shepherd Field for basic training in January, if you can imagine.
Right, in Wichita Falls.
In Wichita Falls.
So you were going north and it was getting colder.
Right? Getting colder.
Yes.
And then after basic training, they shipped us directly south again to Laredo, back to khaki clothes instead of ODs.
Right. And
we took our gunnery training there. At the end of the gunnery training, they shipped us north again to Lincoln, Nebraska, to crew up, to meet the guys we were going to fly with.
And you weren't dressed for that, were you?
No.
It was snowing.
I was, we'd been in khakis in Laredo, and I got off the train in Lincoln, and it was snowing.
Right.
And it was cold. So my buddy and I, old Don Fralick from Houston, we decided we better do something, and so we got us up in Nebraska. They don't have gas and stuff. It didn't at that time. All of it was cold. All of it burned for fuel.
Right.
So we had to get us around a big pot-bellied stove so we stay warm. And so we arranged for that. And so from then, we were there about 4 or 5 days, and they shipped us to Pueblo, Colorado.
Exactly.
And at Pueblo, that's where we crewed up on the way to Pueblo, on a train to Pueblo.
Right.
And we were 2 days, I guess, on the train, and had a meeting with the crew, the pilot and the co-pilot, and a few of us. And so the pilot introduced himself, we all introduced ourselves, and he said, well, how'd I get 2 ball gunners here? And I said, well, it's like this. I said, we both want to fly together on the same crew, so I'm going to be your tail gunner, and Fralick is going to be your ball gunner. So he said, well, how in the hell did I get 2 Texans? I told him, I said, you just got lucky.
The crew was together, you went to Topeka, and then eventually you went to the East Coast to Virginia.
After that, after we did our training at
Topeka?
Not at Topeka, at Pueblo.
At Pueblo, right.
Why, we got a delay en route home, furlough, about 10 days, and then we reported back to Topeka, and we got some more shots, and got 3 days later, we were on a train to Camp Miles Standish in Virginia. Yeah, in Virginia. And this camp was a port of embarkation for every service there was, the Rangers, everything. And those guys were crazy. And hell raising all the time, all night, 24 hours a day. You didn't get to sleep or nothing. So we was glad to get on the ship.
I guess you were. And you were on one of 172 ships that convoyed across the Atlantic to Italy.
It took us forever to load because there were so many ships. But we got set sail one afternoon about 6 o'clock, and we picked up our escort, naval escort, right outside of the danger zone.
Right.
And we had our naval escort all the way over.
Now this was nearly a month, 28 days.
28 days it took us to get over.
To get over, and through some pretty dicey weather sometimes.
Yeah,
right?
we had some good weather. We had, 3 days it would do, you didn't know, in other words, when you went to chow, you didn't know whose mess kit you were eating out of.
Because the ship was rocking so much.
It was rocking so bad. But anything was good in those days.
That's right. So the weather was pretty, in 28 days, I guess.
It was, and we had one submarine attack on the way over.
Right.
And that the Navy took care of.
Right.
And but then all of a sudden the weather got pretty, and hell, we were in Italy. Right. I mean, you know,
right.
it was just a change, just that big a change.
Indeed. You docked at Naples, Italy, I believe, and then eventually you took a train to what would be your home base.
Right.
In Panatella.
We docked at Naples and were there for about 3 days.
Right.
And some of the coldest weather you've ever been in, and sleeping in tents, which was nothing unusual. We were going to do that the rest of our lives, it looked like.
Exactly.
And so we shipped out of there on a little narrow gauge Italian freight train. They took us up to Panatella, which was, I would say, 30 or 40 miles from Foggia. If people know more about the map of Italy, Foggia is almost in the center. And so that was our base for the rest of the time we were there until we finished up.
That's where you flew in and flew out
we
of?
We flew in and flew out.
Panatella. You lived in a tent?
Lived in a tent, boy.
I think a little later we've got a picture of that tent.
Oh, that's right, we do.
The day before your 19th birthday, your very first mission, and that mission was kind of exciting, but it was sort of a sign of what was going to come because you actually got hit on your first mission, right?
Yeah, we did. We got hit on our first mission, and that night at the club, why some of the guys said, Gordon, who'd you fly with today? And I said, oh, somebody by the name O'Connor. And they said, fly away, O'Connor? And I said, yeah. They said, don't ever do that again.
He wasn't the right person to fly with.
He couldn't fly.
Jim, talk about what it was like to be a tail gunner on a B-24. I can't imagine. You're just alone, just sort of hanging over the earth there. Is it exciting and lonely, but you were confident because you had been well trained? I know that. What was it like to be a tail gunner in World War II?
Well, actually, it was, to me, it was I trained to be a ball gunner, which is the lower ball. But to me, it was the best position on the plane. I flew all the positions at one time or another as a volunteer to catch up when I was wounded. And at the nose gunner, you saw too much, and the tail gunner, you saw where you'd been, and that's where I always wanted was to see where I'd been. But nose gunner, you could, you know, see all the fighting and the fight and everything else. It passed you.
Right.
So it was quite an experience. I enjoyed it. I wouldn't. Right at the end of the war, we got a new L model B-24, which gave us a stinger and a tail. So it wasn't a turret. We didn't have to sit in the turret.
Right.
So we could just sit back there, stand back there, lay back there, and there was just a stinger, and you just do your guns like that.
Exactly.
Made it a lot easier, a lot more comfortable.
Right.
If you could say you enjoyed it, yes, I enjoyed it.
Now, most of these 35 missions that you flew, you said the vast majority of them you were hit in one way or another. It was hardly a mission went by that your plane didn't take some fire, right? So
well,
you were used to that.
That's true. You were attacked. In other words, you were attacked every time by flak. Now that's from the 88 and 105 millimeter guns from the ground, and you were attacked a lot of times by fighters, by German fighters. But on a 35 mission thing, I would say that we were attacked at least 30 times, flak our fighters.
Right. But you just kept on going.
Oh,
that bird was tough, right?
You want to go back where you want to go to.
Exactly. You just continue your mission.
Yeah, you go. And some guys get shot up, lose an engine, turn around and go back, and sometimes they made it, sometimes they didn't. And we did that one time when we were lucky and made it.
Right.
And but engine goes out or gets shot out before we get to the target. Well, what do? Do you go on to the target or you turn around and go back? And you call the colonel and ask, you know, here we are, what we're going to do. And he said, he usually would say, it's your crew. And so here you go.
Right, you make the decision.
You make your decision.
Now we're talking about mission. Most of your missions, I believe, were to take out fuel supplies of the Germans, take out train tracks, transportation. Is that what most of the
missions to delay their war effort. The greatest thing that I wanted to take out, I wasn't running it, was the fighters, the German fighters. But the thing that the Allied Command wanted to take out was a fuel supply, like Celeste and Vienna and up at Wiener Nussbaum and all the refineries.
Right.
And then we tried to take out the jet factories and refineries that made fuel for the jet planes.
Exactly. Yeah.
And
we're going to talk about January of 1945, a mission that day when you were wounded. But first I want to go to some photographs. These are some of the pictures that actually hang in your home that you let us borrow. And we're going to go to some of them right now. If we can go to the first one, Jim. There's a picture of young Jim Gordon. About how old were you there?
19.
You were 19 years old. So you were a young rookie right then.
Right then, right.
Good looking airman.
Now that's the one I was talking about a while ago. Black
Let's talk about this. Is a B-24 that was actually flying in formation next to you, and this picture was taken from your airplane.
Right.
Is that right?
It was. This is the one we refer to throughout the Air Force as Black Nan. And that's the one that's hanging on the wall that's colored that I was talking to you about that I like to.
That you have the painting of.
I have a painting of.
Right. So what are we looking at there? Obviously, we're talking about a plane in a lot of trouble.
Actually, they're not. They're a box away from us. There's a box of 7 planes between us, and so they just they got a direct hit. In fact, the conversation over the intercom was from our navigator was, "Oh, Stenovich is going to get hit. He's flying over that battery," and about that time he got hit. There was only 5 shots in that battery, and the 5th one hit him. That's how luck goes.
Now, you told me that there was one survivor from this airplane as it's about to go down. And how did that?
He was evidently, nobody knows, except that they think he was standing on the catwalk, and that just watching the bomb burst. You know, this was a what we called a low-level mission. It's 20,000 feet, so you could see pretty good the ground. You know,
right.
And so he was standing out there, and they got that direct hit in that engine there. Well, it broke the engine off and flipped the airplane, and it flipped him out. And he evidently, luckily, had his chute on.
Right.
He landed in an olive orchard and broke both legs, and he was captured in a German prisoner of war camp, and he became commanding officer as a second lieutenant.
My goodness. Now I want to keep this picture up there just a second, because this is our only picture really of a B-24. When you were flying in a B-24, we can look at the rear of the plane, we see the two gun barrels sticking out. That would have been your gun barrels on your plane, right? Right. And then you can see the nose capsule up there, and then what you call the down below, that's the
spare ball
that's the ball.
Is hidden behind the fire.
Right.
Actually, all you got to do is just do like that, and your plane is right side up, and you
exactly. Exactly. That's a fascinating picture.
Well, it's a fascinating picture, and
you saw this happening.
One of the, I guess, the most famous of Air Force pictures in World War II.
So this plane was to your right?
To my right.
So you were actually looking, I guess, to your left out of the back to actually see this going on, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you were looking to your left because you were in the back.
As the talk was going on, while everybody switched on that.
Wow. Okay, let's go on to the next photograph we have. Here's your crew. This is a picture that hangs in your office, and I know that you're very proud of it. And that's you sitting right there, front and center in the middle.
Yeah, 6 o'clock, right down
there. Right there, the smiling airman there. And that's your crew that you were with from when you all first reported in Houston all the way up. Right?
This was taken in Pueblo, Colorado in 1944.
Right.
And we were together until we got back to the States.
And I believe you told me that out of that group right now, there's
3 of us.
There's 3 of you that are still living.
Yes, 3 of us still living.
Oh, well, I know that you get to see that picture every day, and I know that means a lot to you. Let's go on to the next photograph. There's where you lived.
That's the Hilton.
That's the Hilton. That's the Panatella Hilton, right?
Right.
In Panatella, Italy.
With all the room service you can imagine.
How many lived in that tent?
6 of us.
6 of you.
Yeah.
So you had to be good friends.
You see all of the plumbing outside and everything? I mean, how nice it is?
I do. I see that plumbing outside. I got to say, most of the plumbing was hopefully in the back. That's good. And yeah, and some great landscaping there.
Yes,
too.
it is. This was built in an olive orchard. Those are olive trees in the back there.
Right, right. Well, that was home. My goodness. This is your brother that's in the cockpit of this plane. Talk about him.
Well, Edwin was the Aggie. He was in the 8th Air Force. He was in the G Infantry here at school, but quick as he got his commission, well, he transferred to the Air Force, and he got overseas a little after I did. He was signed to the 8th Air Force to P-51s, which was one of the, I think, the hottest fighter we had at that time, and probably forever. And Edwin, after he completed his missions, he went down to Munich, down in that area there, and did a year or 2 of Air Force occupation, and then came home, went back to A&M, and finished up 6 hours, and graduated.
I want to talk more about your family a little bit later. Let's go ahead and go to the next picture. This is one of your reunions with 6 of you there.
This was probably 1989.
You're standing in the middle, by the way.
Yes, I am. 1989 in Las Vegas, and my pilot standing to my left shoulder there. My radio operator's out here, and Frederick, the boy, is to my right, and Chuck Williams is over there to the right. Now Chuck was I'll tell you in a minute about Chuck. And Ed Gordon, who is no relation, is kneeling down there in the bottom. Chuck was he came to us as you form up and you build and you know things fall apart. Why, we had like 2 guys that got airsick all the time, could not fly, and you know either true or false. You can't use them, so you replace them. So Chuck came to us from a crew that
Right.
had, Chuck was in town that day visiting his girlfriend, and his crew was flying. And they crashed into one of those mountains out there, killed them all,
Oh,
and
my.
Chuck was the only one alive.
Oh my goodness.
And Chuck came with us and lived to tell about it.
Oh my goodness. What a sad story. But I'm glad that he lived. And there's 3 of you out of those 6 that we just saw. There's 3 of you
us.
that are still
Yeah,
alive.
still alive.
January 20th, 1945. Talk about that mission, because you earned your Purple Heart that day. Talk about what happened to you.
Well, it was just a regular mission. We were flying about 28,000 feet. It was 65 below zero, and we got hit by a flak, and I was the only one actually that got hit. It severed my oxygen line, and so, but as we come off the target, why the pilot Houston always called oxygen chest, and so you'd say tail okay, ball okay, waist okay. Well, when I didn't say okay, well then they sent by somebody back there to look at me. Well, there I was slumped over my control. Well, what had happened, one of my tubes had been severed, and so I wasn't getting any oxygen. And so they grabbed an oxygen bottle off the wall and slapped it on me and brought me around and saved my life.
Right. But you had been wounded.
Yeah.
Talk about
Well, yeah,
seeing
well, this
your
is
ear.
what we were trained for, you know.
Right.
To an emergency like this. And the navigator, Brazos, came from the front of the plane to the back of the plane
Right.
to give me first aid.
Right.
So that night, they put me in the 4th Field Hospital, and I was sitting there on that table. Of course, you know, had a drink of whiskey by then, you know. Sitting there on that gurney, and I was the last one. There was a lot of wounded that day, and I was the last one they got hold of. Of course, I guess I was the least wounded.
Right.
So I could look at my left. I could look to my left, and I could see my ear. Now, if you can look at your left and see your ear,
You're wounded.
Right. But anyway, so the major, old major surgeon, he said, Sergeant, I think we're going to have to cut your ear off. And I said, not mine. And he said, yes, sir. So there was a captain there that just gotten back from New York Burn Institute, where they'd been training them. And he said, Major, let me have a few days with him. And he used penicillin on me, and I got well. That was the first time penicillin was used in that theater.
Right.
And so that's how wonderful it was at that time.
And so you were actually back
Well,
flying within
25 days I was back flying.
And you were back flying.
Back flying, so trying to catch up with the crew before they went home.
We're starting to run a little short on time, but I want you to talk about that. You actually flew some missions with another group just to catch up with your crew, because you all had pretty much promised each other you'd go home at the same time.
Yeah.
So you wanted to get your 35 in the same time they got their 35
So I was
in.
flying every day, every other day, as fast as I could to catch up, and I caught up.
And you did catch up. And you all went home together.
Went home together.
And you did go home together. Talk about, real quick, you told me about you were a cigar smoker. And one time that became a real bad idea. What happened?
Oh, well, this will break you from smoking cigars.
Yeah, it will.
I smoked cigars from, I don't know when. I never smoked cigarettes, smoked cigarettes. So every time we'd get on, we'd take off, I always had a cigar in my pocket. Well, I would get the oxygen when we had to put oxygen mask on. Well, I'd light my cigar up. And so let's just go on and go on. And cigars didn't burn very fast up in that high oxygen. They were very slow burn.
Right.
Well, one day I was sitting back here in the sunlight smoking that cigar, and we got a direct hit. And this this aviation fuel hit me, and I was standing in it.
Smoking a cigar.
Smoking a cigar.
But there was so little oxygen.
So little oxygen, it didn't cause a fire. It didn't explode. But,
Instead, I think you told me that the gasoline actually put out the cigar.
We did. It put out the fire. But I quit.
That's, Yeah, and that's a good reason to quit. Very, very good reason to quit. We've just got a couple of minutes left, and I do want to move on. You did go home with your crew. I want you to talk about your family because it's a fascinating story. I know all of your brothers, you and your brothers, they all served. You have children who served, and you have a great niece, as a matter of fact, that you have a picture of in your home. You're a family of military service, aren't you?
Oh, quite.
Yes.
In fact, all of us, I feel, I can recall son-in-laws, everybody. But speaking of Debbie,
that's your great niece.
That's my great niece.
Right.
She's a lieutenant colonel. I mean, she's a colonel, full colonel.
Right.
And will be a lieutenant general, big general next time.
Right.
And she's 34 years old, has flown in 3 or 4 wars. She's a tanker pilot. And of course, then you saw my brother, there was a P-51 pilot. And, my son-in-law, you didn't see him, he was a helicopter pilot.
Right. And I believe you have a nephew that's serving in Iraq right now.
Yeah, you have in fact, have 3 of them. One of them is there right now, but they've been rotating in and out all the time. Yeah.
You and your wife Jean have been married for 40 years,
right.
and for 40 years and still going, 56 years, you've been a pharmacist. And you know what? We're out of time.
Oh.
But we thank you very much for your service, and I wish we had more time to talk about it, but it goes fast.
It does.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. Like most all who survived World War II, Jim Gordon followed his military service with a civilian career. And for Jim Gordon, it was as a pharmacist, now for some 56 years and counting. He comes from an extended family of military service, and he is as proud of that as anything else. We thank Jim Gordon, his family, and all veterans for their service. And thanks to our underwriter, First National Bank. I'm Tom Turbeville for Jim Gordon. We'll see you next time on Veterans of the Valley.